You know, fellas, every once in a while, a conversation comes along that hits you right between the eyes and in the heart. Because it's not just about surviving life, it's about becoming fully alive again. And today, I sit down with one of my high school classmates and fellow DSmet Spartan, John O'Leary, a man whose story has moved millions and now the entire world through his brand new film, Soul on Fire. We talk about redemption, pain, and what it means to lead your family with faith instead of fear. John's words about how scars can become the very thing that heals others. And man, it is one of the most powerful things you'll hear on today's podcast. And if you've ever wondered what kind of man you want to be remembered as, what kind of father your kids will talk about when you're gone, this conversation, gents, today is your blueprint. So gentlemen, get ready. This one is going to hit you in the heart. This is John O'Leary, and this is the Dad Edge Podcast. John O'Leary, DSmet Spartan fellow. Not many podcast hosts could say that, man. But dude, it's so good to have you, man.
So I have done, dude, I'm not kidding, probably 1,000 podcasts as this film rolls out. That is my very first DSmet introduction yet. So I'm in rarefied air when I'm on with you, Larry.
I love it, man. So I got to tell you, man, I saw the movie Soul on Fire. And, you know, I don't know how many people know this, but they do now, right? You and I graduated high school together. We were in the same class, 1994, DeSmet High School. And I've known you ever since, you know, for 31 years now, right? From a distance anyway. And, but I got to tell you, man, as I was sharing with you before we hit record today, my wife and I and family, we saw the movie Soul on Fire that came out a few weeks back. And I got to tell you, man, I expected it to be a good movie, but I was literally blown away. Like, and my family, like, they loved it. The whole audience, the theater cheered at the end of the movie.
Right.
And my wife and kids even asked me, they're like, what'd you think? And I was like, knowing John, like, and knowing him in high school, I cannot believe at how closely Joel played the part of John. It was just absolutely unreal. And then the story, there were so many things that I didn't know about you, even though we went to high school together. And I had no idea. I knew Jack Buck was obviously involved, but I had no idea to the extent. And, but just to see, like, you know, cause I read your book and everything and I knew about the story, but to see, like, even John Corbett played your dad, Denny, and, like, even coming into the emergency room. And I remember even reading that in the book, and the first time you talked about it on the podcast, like, where's my son? And you were terrified. And, like, I'm getting the chills talking about it just because, like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I actually get to see this story unfold that I knew about for so long, but it was just so good, man. But, like, I'm so curious, like, what type of feedback have you received since the movie came out?
Well, we'll start with kind of the funny feedback. There was a reviewer out west who gave us 1 out of 5 stars.
Oh, nice.
And then he said, John O'Reilly's story has to be made up. Then he went on to say the O'Reilly house could not be rebuilt in 5 months because there's a scene halfway through the movie where the little boy comes home to the house. And there's a couple things funny about that. Number one is I did come back to that house. And number two is he's claiming it's impossible for a kid to go back into a house that burned down and ignoring the fact the kid was burned on 100% of his body. And that's not what you're questioning. The kid has no fingers and learned how to jam the piano. The kid should have died in the hospital bed, and some radio announcer who had no business visited him, was told the kid was going to die, and then he comes back. The kid is scarred from his neck to his toes and grotesque in the world's view. And the hottest girl at St. Louis University falls in love with that kid and takes his hand and kisses him and loves the scars and moves forward into life. And so here's this cynic and this critic, and they've earned both those job titles, giving us 1 star when they can't even get the last name right. And they're missing the entire mark of how God works through all things, even broken critics and broken people like myself. So that's the funny side. So that's some of the feedback we're getting. But alternatively, it is the #1 ranked film in the country right now. 98% Rotten Tomato radio. Like that. It's incredible. So 98% of the audiences outside of that guy are deeply moved by it. And more than the percentages, man, it's like you may not be able to see, but there's like a stack of letters behind me,
See.
and they just keep showing up physically and in emails and in DMs and in text, and it's random friends from college and high school. It's my favorite so far is a Marine from Sacramento who served 2 tours in Vietnam, came home with a hollowed out heart. These are his words. Has not felt in 4 decades or 5 decades. And then he said, John, I sat down for this film, wasn't even sure why I was in the room. When the words came across the screen to begin, I just started crying. And he said, I cried for the entire almost 2 hours. But when I left with my heart renewed and broken for good with hope.
Oh, wow.
So what feedback are we hearing? Like the same feedback you heard when you were in the theater. People laugh and they cry and they applaud, not John's greatness, but God's greatness and working through ordinary people.
Dude, I love that. And I love how you give the glory back to God. I know you're a faith-based person, and I love how you do that. I have to ask, was it hard for you to see the movie? I mean, especially some of the scenes like where, obviously where the burning happens and the recovery and, being in the ER and that kind of thing. Like I'm looking at this little boy who played you, right? And I'm sitting there like especially if you're a parent, right? Especially if you're a dad, like when you see something, when you hear the story, right? And you hear the words, you're like, wow, that is really, really tough. But then you see it on film, you see it on the big screen, you're like, whoa, like this not only obviously affected you, it affected everyone in your life. But for you personally, was it difficult to see any of the film?
To be honest, all of the film is difficult to see. Like, so from a positive note, the movie was all shot on location. So when you see that home where there's an older version of me on the screen porch talking to his dad, that's my mom and dad's house, man. That is the screen porch where dad and I had that conversation.
Are you serious? The screen porch too?
Yeah, that's our home, man.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
When you see the explosion in the garage, like that is our garage. When you see the front hall where the little kids are screaming, when I walk in on Christmas morning, man, that's my house, man. So that all happened. When you see John and Beth dancing in front of the clock tower at St. Louis U, like that's where we had our first dance. And when you see her walk down the aisle at the Shrine of St. Joseph, that's where we got married. The girl portraying Beth is actually wearing her actual wedding dress.
I heard that.
And the people in the second row, those aren't actors. Those are my real mom and dad. And so like the whole thing is like, what, like in what world outside of the end of life experience, when you have that quick recall of your life, I believe that happens. Like, I really do believe when you die, you get a quick recall of your life. And shockingly, your ordinary classmate from way back in the 90s at DeSmet has had this review of his life brought to you by Hollywood. And it all blows my mind. But to your most specific question, the hardest part to watch wasn't the wedding scenes or some intimate moments in our life that are, they're for us, but now they're for the world. It was watching, because the day of the fire, what we realized is we did not want to show a kid burning. Like, who wants to watch that? So we showed it from the perspective of that child. So what is it like to be blown up and then come from the flames back into the house? So that you don't see the child, you see his point of view, POV, baby. So you're looking out, and as I'm on set that day at my mom and dad's house, as the actors are doing their thing, I'm experiencing this thing precisely from the perspective I experienced 38 years ago. Like the view you see is indeed my view. And so these actors, and what broke me, and I haven't been asked this really, so if I get more emotional, it's because it's just real. I'm good with it. Like, I'm married and 4 kids. Like, I am healed physically and spiritually from that. But as I was watching, I see these 2 little girls come down the steps. Oh man. And those kids play my sisters. And that's what they saw. And those screams they belted out, those are the screams I heard. But in seeing their faces again, it just broke me. And then watching my brother come up the steps and what he did and his fight against the flames to beat them down. But also, as he's doing so, he's burning himself. And to see all this POV, actors portraying it, man, and it just grips me, because I'm healed, but I look at them and I know that story broke them too. And we don't talk about them as much. Even when we celebrate how great they were and are, we don't talk about the healing that they needed as they recovered from what they went through.
Mm, that is, I didn't even think about that. And you're right. I got to be honest, man. I purposely didn't ask any details about the movie other than what our buddy Dan Lewis told me because he couldn't help himself. Because he was on set a lot with you and that kind of thing. Which, by the way, for the audience, he's my neighbor. But I I didn't even really think about like the other people that were impacted by the trauma that they probably experienced as well. But I was nervous the reason I share with you, I didn't ask any detail for the movie, but I was very nervous about that part because like, I was like, man, I don't like, I don't even, I love movies.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but the older I get and if I see something that is graphic, it just gets to me more the older I get. I think it's because I think maybe we get more in touch with reality of how things could happen to us or our kids or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just like you can almost, I think, and as an adult, you feel trauma and pain even when you're watching it more.
Totally.
But I was very nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like how are they going to portray this kid, catching on fire? And I got to tell you, the way that it was portrayed, in that scene, I thought was not only better for the audience because I think it would have been maybe a little hard to see that, but seeing it from POV, from that point of view, I thought was genius because I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're actually watching this as if he were to have experienced it firsthand, right?
Yeah.
And while that was somewhat difficult to watch, it wasn't nearly as difficult to watch as if you were to see it in the third person. But that perspective, and now that you've mentioned it, was like, wow, yeah, that was an important part. And I think I think the way that they filmed that was so good. I want to move actually to John Corbett, who played your dad, Denny. First of all, I'm a huge fan of John. I love his acting. I think he's just one of those, it's kind of like what you see on film is kind of probably what you get, just a very nice, genuine human being. But, and I know your dad, and I hope this isn't too terribly difficult for you to talk about, but I know your dad passed away
Yeah.
right before the movie came out. But what was that like, seeing this man portray your dad and then obviously your dad passing? Was that difficult for you?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is difficult and redemptive. I mean, welcome to the cross. Like these things don't live in isolation. They're perfectly married up. And once we embrace that, you are no longer a victim. We live in a victimized society in part because of choice. And I know that could get me in big trouble here on your podcast with some of your listeners saying, O'Leary, you have no idea what I'm going through. And for sure I don't. But I do know at some point we have an opportunity, and I believe the mandate to recognize that it can be redeemed. That the thing that you most struggle with, the scars that you most despise, can actually be the very thing that heals others. And I saw this, ignoring my story, man. Let me tell you about my dad's. Dad had Parkinson's disease for 30 years. Dad, before that, was healthy and a veteran and a business owner and just on top of the world, but joyful and humble. And then after Parkinson's, man, he broke every bone in his body. That's not an exaggeration. He struggled with bowel movements. He wore a diaper for a decade. Like this wasn't a fun life. He lost the ability to speak and swallow before it was all said and done. And he did all of that with profound grace and joy and humility. So I saw a man struggle mightily who smiled his way through it, and not because of drugs or lies. He just recognized life. All of it is a gift. All of it. So then he meets on set John Corbett, who is this West Virginia guy. He only met his dad 3 times before he turned 21. So Corbett doesn't know what it's like to have a dad, but he knows what it's like to want one and to strive to become like one. He's not a father himself, but to see this man show up in our world, he first showed up in my mom and dad's house. And I have this brilliant picture of Dad and John hugging. So John's bending down over a wheelchair, hugging the guy he's about to portray. And then there's a picture afterwards where I got them straight on, like looking at the camera, and both of them have this radiant joy on their faces, just like. So I got to watch, this actor. You said you said it in a way that's accurate. You're like, I'm not even sure he's really acting. And I've told Corbett to his face, I'm not sure he knows how to act. He's just like a great dude who delivers lines in the way they should be delivered so the audience believes whatever he's saying next. But when the camera stops rolling, he doesn't stop. He just turns, and whether it's the director, Sean McNamara, or Dan, one of the investors, or whoever else it might be, he treats everybody as if they matter. And it's not an act. I thought for a while it was just an act for, like anybody can pretend for a little bit. I've known John now for 3 years. Well, like he's my buddy. He treats every single person as if they are the most important person. No questions asked ever, which is exactly how my dad treated every single person. When my father passed away, he died on May 30th. Dan, your neighbor, was at his funeral a few days later. But Dan wasn't alone. There were almost 1,000 people gathered for a man who was unable to speak for a decade, unable to move for probably 20 years, unable to earn, because, you got a lot of dads who listen to your podcast, man. Be a man, go out there and get a job, earn, succeed, climb the ladder, show us culturally what machismo looks like in action. And I saw in front of me my dad, who was the exact opposite of that. It doesn't mean he doesn't wish he could have done that, but he also recognized that this was now his cross to carry, and he carried it with such grace that it attracted people in. While I was at my dad's deathbed, people knew he was dying. There were 4, now this is going to get me, but there were 4 different people there on the last 2 days who came by to say, Denny, thank you for being the dad that I wish I had. Thank you for being the dad that I wish I had. Those were conversations that I heard. How many others were said when I was out of the room, or people who could not make it back into St. Louis to say goodbye to my dad? So men, what does it look like to be the dad that others wish they had? It looks like presence. It looks like joy. It looks like listening. It looks like smiling. It looks like Jesus. It looks like love. It's not that hard. It's available and accessible for all of us if we can put down the phone and put down the race and just be fully present with the person in front of us. It will change not only our life, I saw it in my dad, but it will change the lives of everybody we encounter.
I love that, man. The way that John played your dad was just this man of grace, of faith, of joy, of gratitude. And, I see that in you as well. And even with your crosses to bear. But I would just love for you to just tie this in a bow and just share with me and the audience, like, what was the most meaningful things that you learned from your dad that you see yourself implementing even in your own family, like with Beth and with the kids and everything else?
Well, I mentioned one of them a moment ago, presence. I don't remember. Listen, my dad ran a business. He was an attorney. Additionally, he was a veteran. You add all that up, like he's kind of type A, which means he's running, man. And yet, when you said the name Dad, wherever he was moving stopped, and he turned and faced his favorite child.
Guys, I want to hit pause here for a second, because what John just shared hits every dad who's a business owner right in the gut. So many of us are building companies, we're chasing growth and leading teams, but at what cost? In the Dad Edge Business Boardroom Brotherhood, we bring high-performing fathers together who are running businesses and the key word there is and, leading homes. It's not about hustle, it's about alignment. You'll sit shoulder to shoulder with other men who get it. Men who can challenge you in your business, sharpen your leadership, and help you scale without losing what matters most: your marriage, your kids, and even your inner peace. And guys, you hear me talk about the Dad Edge Business Boardroom Brotherhood all the time, and that's because I believe in it 100%. We have 4 coaches in that group that have specialties for everything. We have a business coach. Yours truly is the marriage coach. We also have a parenting coach and a leadership coach. We even have a 5th guy in there, Jake Herbert, who's in charge of client success and accountability. We do not allow you to fail. We will help you grow your business, help you continue to grow and scale your business. We're going to help you lead better at home. We're going to help you attract your wife back to you. And we've been doing this for 8 years. I have seen marriages literally come from the ashes and be rebuilt. I have seen teenagers who won't talk to their kids completely and totally recreate a beautiful connection with their kids. I've seen men struggle in their businesses and then be able to pull themselves back out of it, have freedom of time, and create more profit in that program. I got to tell you guys, without a shadow of a doubt, it is one of our most powerful programs that we have. And if you are a business owner, get in there. Head on over to thedadedge.com/mastermind. You will see the pathway in there for the Dad Edge Business Boardroom. You've got to apply and you've got to book a call with our team in order to get in there. Hope I see you in there. Let's get back to my conversation with John O'Leary.
And that's how all 6 of his kids felt. We are still sure, and we fight over it, which one of us was Dad's favorite, because we all know it. It's us. Without a doubt, our favorite. Dad loved us the most. That's a pretty cool way to love a child, or to love a wife, or to love a stranger. So I remember that about my dad. I remember.
Interject here real quick.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this for a second. So your dad, type A, 6 kids, business owner, attorney, all these, like my brother's an attorney as well. And like, he's got 2 kids and I see how crazy his life is insane. And then for your dad to be able to be like, time out, one of my kids needs something, and turn that attention towards your kids, you know, that's difficult. That is really, really hard, because it's so easy to say, hey, give me a minute, let me finish this, or, 1 second, or just try to meander your way through the conversation, but you're distracted. But your dad stopped.
Right.
And he would give people attention. And to be honest with you, man, I mean, like, for what little we interact, like, I see that same thing in you as well. But when your dad did that for you guys growing up, like, what did that feel like for you? That dad would stop, and even like looking back on it now, being an adult, and you know how difficult that is, like, how meaningful is it for you even now?
So to my left, there's a big old picture. It's a Rembrandt knockoff. So don't come swinging by my office trying to steal my Rembrandt, because you'll get a $9 cheap oil if you do. But up on this wall, there's this Rembrandt, and it's called The Return of the Prodigal Son. And Rembrandt painted that twice. The first time was when he was on top of the world, and it's a garbage painting. You can look it up. The second time is up on this wall, and the real one hangs in Russia, in St. Petersburg. But it's this majestic picture of a dad reaching down to his broken son. And the right hand is very dainty, very feminine. The left hand is very broad, very masculine. You see the veins even coursing out of this tough hand. So in other words, both sides coming together. The weak and the strong, the feminine and the masculine, perfectly as one, grabbing a child, pulling him close. And then you see this kid just like surrendered into the will, like the loving will and grace of his dad. It's this beautiful shot. And then you see over to the left, this curmudgeon-y older son, hands ringed, looking down like, what the heck am I looking at? What is this garbage? That boy down there on his knees has not earned grace. And I share all that with you because people have asked, like, why would, I recognize that not everybody listens to your podcast as a Christian, but why would Jesus refer to God as Father? Like, why not Almighty Creator? Why not a neutral term? And some spiritual thinkers, theologians now think it's because he recognized that there would be a profound father wound that most kids grow up with. Most kids would have no clue what an actual good dad looks like. No clue. Because we're so busy, we're so judgmental, we're out with our friends, we're addicted to one device or one bottle or whatever the thing is. We're just broken people. And that's how we raise our kids. That long answer to say, I had an example of an incredible father growing up, and so do my 5 siblings. We don't need to shut our eyes and imagine what God looks like, because when we open our eyes, we saw it. That sounds so arrogant almost, but we saw a man who worked hard. My dad never missed a day of school, grade school, middle school, high school, college, law school, served his nation, never missed a day. The only time he missed a day is when he got Parkinson's disease and could no longer work. And yet he was humble in every season. He was joyful in every season. He was other-oriented in every season. His words helped heal in every season. He was not racist in every season. He was not classist in any season. He had time to coach up his kids in volleyball and basketball. Like he was always there for everyone else. So I was lucky enough, and you saw the film, that drum beat, I think he says it 3 times in the movie, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what God says to us. And that's what my dad said to his 6 kids every time we screwed up. And it wasn't to become our friends. I think a lot of parents these days want to be friends with their kids. My dad wasn't my friend. He was my hero. He was my dad. And you've said now twice, John, I see a lot of that in you. If that's true, it's only because I'm trying to be like my dad. I hope my whole life becomes more and more like his.
What an incredible honor. Like, and I have no doubt your dad just heard you, and he knows your heart, and what an incredible honor. And these are lessons that we could all take. I think what you just did is you took the concept of intentional presence and you just put it on steroids, and you gave several examples of what that looks like, and not only what it looks like, but what it feels like from a kid's perspective. And now you get to carry that forward into your own family, which I absolutely love. I want to move on to another character in the movie, which is William H. Macy, which first time I ever saw William H. Macy in anything was in Fargo.
Likewise.
So that was my first impression of William H. Macy as an actor, which I was like, what is this movie even about? But then when I heard that he, was casted to play Jack Buck, I was like, that should be interesting. And I obviously from St. Louis, you grew up with Jack Buck just like you did and I did. But I was really, really just pleasantly surprised at how well he played that part. And it was just incredible. And I remember being in high school, and I remember freshman year, and I literally remember seeing you walk around, and I remember asking somebody like, and I was like, hey, what happened to that kid? And I remember people hearing the story, putting pieces together. It's like, oh, he was in an accident, and he was in a house fire, and he even got to be friends with Jack Buck through it. I'm like, what? Like, how does that happen? And then just little tidbits of the story kind of came out here and there. But the thing that I found really fascinating is exactly probably what you found most fascinating is here's a guy who's a celebrity, right? Everybody knows who he is. He's the voice of baseball, especially if you're from St. Louis. But this guy is at a dinner, a formal dinner with his wife, and he hears about your story. He hears about you being in the hospital. The guy gets in the car and drives to the hospital, doesn't know you, doesn't know your family, just knows your name. And then he starts talking to you while you're in the ICU. And I'm just like, I found myself in the movie asking, why is this guy doing this? Like, why is he doing this? Like, I'm like Jack Buck is like, I think it was the 50s or 60s. I'm 50. And I'm like, would I do something like that? Or like, would I feel weird about doing something like that?
Oh.
But he kept coming back and he did all these incredible things for you. And I was waiting for like, why did he do this? And then at the very end of the movie, you're like, why did you do this? And he was just like, you look like you needed some help. Now I'm like, holy cow. Like it was so simple, and it was just so giving. And still to this day, John, like even after I've seen the movie, I'm like, but what was it? Like,
Fair enough, man.
Like, what was it? Did he ever tell you like, cause he just constantly just wanted to pour into you.
So I'll speak to it from the movie's perspective and then life's perspective. So in the film, one of my favorite scenes, as it's shot at least, is after you see Jack Buck at the charity event, and then he overhears about a little kid who's dying in the fire because of the fire earlier that day. And then it cuts to the next scene, and you just see a door. You hear a door open up, but it's a low shot. It's about 1.5 feet of clearance, and you just see 2 patent leather shoes, black shoes, walk into a room. And then you hear the chair get dragged across the floor, and then they dolly up, and it goes past the kid in the hospital bed, and you see William H. Macy clearly for the first time looking like Jack Buck. And it's just a beautiful shot. And then they pull back a little bit, and they show you what he's looking at. And it's this mummified kid on a trach dying. And then he clears his throat and goes to work. Kid, wake up. You're going to live. Which is remarkable. I get asked to visit people in hospital, and I feel like I'm earning sainthood when I do it once. If I'm just being candid with you, like my one visit in, I'm like, whew, aren't I a hero, man? Go back out to my car, back to my life. That guy wasn't asked to do it. He did it without being even encouraged. And then he's told by the staff the kid's going to die, and he comes back anyway. And it's not like, well, yeah, but John, he wasn't that busy. Please, the guy had 8 kids.
He had
Uh,
8 kids?
6 with one with his first wife, 2 with his second.
I had no idea.
He was in 7 Hall of Fames. He said yes to every charity event ever. So this isn't a guy who was longing to be used. Like he's not bored. Why do it? And so now back into the movie time. The film near the end, when John and Jack are saying goodbye, really for what's going to end up being one of the last times. True stories. I asked him, and his response, I don't remember it distinctly, but it was essentially what William H. Macy says in the film, which was, seems like you needed a little help. When I wrote the script with the help of Gregory Poirier, we wrote in like meaning behind that. Like, what do you mean a little help? And like answered that. But then we like redlined that because I think the unknown is so much more powerful because it doesn't answer the question at all. I mean, who doesn't need a little bit of help? And does that mean you go by 50 times a visit and send baseballs? And like, so the understated lack of answer to my question is part of the beauty of his life. So Joe Buck and I had the opportunity on Thursday last week of being in Dallas and doing a speaking event together for the first time. And so that question came up, and like neither one of us could give an answer at all as to what his real motivation was. He was other oriented. He grew up during the Great Depression. He grew up with very little. He received a Purple Heart overseas in Europe, came home wounded, but also humbled and grateful, and never, ever forgot where he came from, which is as you climb, men and ladies, like it's important to never forget that you started off on the bottom rung too. Because then that humbles you to love the ones who are currently down there through omission or commission. They're down there. We got to love them. Jack loved them all. But there's no clear motivator on why this kid in particular. He did a lot of good work in the community, but he laid down his life for a stranger, and no one really knows why.
Dude, yeah, now that you explain that there really was, I'm so glad you guys redlined that because it made it exactly what it should have been, where it's like, he just needed some help and he gave it.
Right.
And he probably didn't even have the bandwidth to give it. But the fact that he gave it because he saw that somebody needed it and that was it. I mean, my gosh, we could all take just a beautiful lesson from that. Like, hey, this person needed it. That's why I did it.
Well, and it just to put a bow on that, I mean, he gave it away to a dying kid, an unknown kid, a nobody kid. This isn't humility. It's God's truth. He gave it away to a kid who barely got out of the cement with you, barely made it into St. Louis University, overslept his own college graduation because he partied too much at Humphreys the night before. Doesn't know what he's going to do professionally when I graduate SLU. So I start my own business because I can't do anything. I'm unemployable. Like, that's not, again, humility. It's just true. I'd do my own thing, I guess, because no one will hire me. I went through the ringer, went through all the interviews, did not get a job. So I started my own thing. And then 10 years in, start speaking. And so here's a guy who shows up in the life of a kid who is really a nobody. And yet through grace, that nobody ends up with a platform to speak 2,700 times around the world, to have a couple best-selling books, and to now have a full feature film, not celebrating how great John O'Leary is, but celebrating how great the community was in my world. And one of those individuals celebrated is some announcer who thought I could use a little help. It's just the full circle moment of this guy gave humbly and quietly, never talked about it, never wrote about it, never bragged about it. And now all around the world, people are seeing the story portrayed by William H. Macy of how great Jack was.
He really was, man. That gets me emotional. Just thinking about it, just because, I never met Jack Buck, but, you kind of grow up with him. And then, to see William H. Macy play him so well on top of it, like just all the finite details that were in there of just how he supported you. And he just did it from this place of like, this is just what I'm going to do. Right. And I love that. I do have one more question for you. I don't know if you've ever been asked this, but it's a question that really emerged for me while you were talking about your own dad. Um, and let me try to get through this without getting emotional myself. But John, you have this absolutely incredible way of honoring your dad. Like, and here's what I'll also say, and I know you're a very humble guy, and you probably don't, if you're anything like me, you don't take compliments well, but I love how the fact that you constantly shine the spotlight on everyone else and on God versus like, this is John Leary's game. This is John Leary's show, right? It's like, you really do such a wonderful job of encapsulating everyone and their experience in this and how everyone, had trauma from it, but also rallied and all the good things and all the challenging things that have happened. But you talk, dude, there's a part of me, I'll be very honest with you. I wish I had a dad like yours.
Yeah.
I really do. Because what a beautiful experience to just be in the presence of a man like that. And you honor him so incredibly beautifully. And you have done such a wonderful job of taking 90% of this interview and shine the light on other people. But I want to cast the light just a little bit to you, if that's okay. I would love to know that when our time comes, me and you, and we're no longer on this earth, but what do you want your kids to say about you and the impact that you had on them when we're no longer here?
Well, I left a podcast interview a couple years ago in New York, and I walked outside of this guy's office, and I said, I was looking up at this gorgeous building, like 6 stories tall, looked like a big old Greek cathedral. Wasn't sure what it was. And he said, it's a Jewish temple. And I said, what's that? What's that around the top? And it was, I think in Hebrew. And I said, man, I don't read Hebrew. What's it say? And he said, it's a quote from Micah: seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. Seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. And so as I build businesses and create film and do all the things we do, like climb, I'm not against chasing revenue and everything else, but at the end of the day, I'm seeking justice. I'm loving mercy. I'm trying to walk humbly with God. That's what's guiding me forward. That's why I do what I do. When the film came out, we had, man, the travel schedule's been wild. It's been wild. And there was one day where 1 week where I was in 7 different states, landed back in St. Louis at 7:00 at night. And then my son Patrick had to get up to Milwaukee for a baseball tryout. He's a senior in high school at DeSmet. And our family, what we had wrestled with was like, well, let's just let him not do it, because like maybe some other time. But what I knew is like my job is as a dad. It's not to sell movie tickets. Like I just love your kid. So landed at 7, got in the car, got into Milwaukee about 2:30, got this kid off to the little practice. He makes the team. Now he can go to school there if he wants for college, which is awesome. I'm telling you that story because as a dad, men, and as a mom, ladies, if they're talking about how many books you sold, how much money you made, how many airline miles you collected, they'll be talking about the wrong thing. I hope my kids are clear that John laid down his life repeatedly, intentionally, for his entire life for something bigger than himself, for their mom, for John's mom, for each of the 4 kids, and then for random folks that we just got to bump into in the marketplace of life. And so I hope they can see within their dad what I saw so vividly within mine, which was just this selfless servant. That doesn't mean my dad didn't achieve, but it just meant his life was never about the achievement. In fact, I had the honor of eulogizing my dad. And I began, in fact, I always begin with a joke. So I began with some goofy joke, but then I shared my dad's successes. President of the United States Legal Counsel, like all these big titles. And I said, I bet most of you have never heard of any of that, have you? Like no one had heard of this, including some of the kids in the front row. And I said, it's because none of those things define who my dad was. My dad was a Christian. He was a husband. He was a son. He was a father. He was a friend. He was these things first and foremost always. So I hope my kids are able to recognize maybe their dad sold some books. Maybe we moved some box office. Maybe we moved some hearts. But the most important thing we did is we loved it home, and we did it well, and we did it intentionally.
I lo- I mean, dude, that's the dream, for I think any dad out there. If we always say on the podcast, 95% of what we chase really doesn't matter at the end, but it's all about the relationships and the impact you have under your own roof. Those are the needle movers in life. Well, John, I got to tell you, man.
If that's true, then get a tattoo on your chest so when you're shaving in the morning, you can't forget it. And if that's true, then cut most social media. And if that's true, then cut the cable. Quit paying attention to Fox or MSNBC or whatever other garbage, candidly, is coming into your life every day, reminding you how little control you have. You have control over the things that matter. And that's enough. It may not change the political season. It may not get rid of things that we wish might change, but it allows you to have influence over the lives of those ultimately you only have influence over anyway for a very limited amount of time. So, man, I love your work. I love how you're pouring into guys so that they can become the best versions of themselves, so they can raise up the next generation. You can't do that passively, and you can't do it by happenstance, and you can't do it accidentally. But with focus, with faith, with intentionality, you can change the world one life at a time.
Mm. Dude, I wish we could bottle that up. So guys, go ahead and hit the rewind button, the 15-second market, or 30-second, at least 4 times, and get that again, because that was worth the price of admission right there. John, this was awesome. I've been looking so forward to this interview for such a long time, and I got to tell you, I'm so glad we got it together, man. I want to make sure that the guys can find you, find the movie, your books, and just anywhere else you want to point the audience in the direction of.
Well, you and I chatted beforehand, like, John, what do you want? And I'm like, I don't want movie tickets, but let me say, and why not? Like, here's what I would say. Hollywood is a democracy. And right now they got Tron and Springsteen and horror flicks and violence, and we have superheroes who wear tights and capes. And yet there's this little movie in the middle of the pack called Soul on Fire, which is ultimately the story of heroes and grace and love, unconditionally so, in a marketplace that is longing for actual examples of those things. So if you want more of those things for your family and your kids, then vote. Like, go. Take them. They will love it. They will laugh. They will cry. You can have a pizza afterwards and talk about it. Take your neighbors. I think it's a very cool way to inform Hollywood that what they've been giving us in the past is not what we want going forward. So this is about bigger than just John's story. It's about our kids' stories and the kind of culture they grow up in. So to me, this matters. Where can you learn more about that? You can go to johnolearyinspires.com. So johnolearyinspires.com. And on that website, I'm sure we have a link to like where the film is playing. It's in, I think, 1,700 theaters, 50 states. Eventually, they're going to, for those listening weeks or months down the road, it's going to be streaming. It will eventually be back on Netflix and onward from there. So there's always going to be a way to check this thing out. But my hope is when you watch it, don't watch it by yourself. Bring in your kids. Bring in a neighbor who doesn't believe, who thinks life is all bad. They've been victimized by it all and they're just done. And then afterwards have a conversation about what the next right steps are. Because the one chapter doesn't define the story. My dad modeled this. Larry, you have modeled this. I think in some regards, my life has been a model of this. Jack Buck's example is of this. So if the previous chapters aren't working for you, take a deep breath, take a big old swallow, and let's go to work. Let's make the next one even better. And I think Soul on Fire is a wonderful way to amp you up, to recognize you have agency to do exactly this.
I got to tell you, I heard this quote not too long ago, but when you spend your money, you're voting for what you want more in the world of. So like if you're spending money on the horror flicks and the Marvel characters and all that, but what we really need, especially I would say right now more than ever, where the world is so triggering, we need something like this good in the world. And what I can tell you guys is I've seen the movie, my family's seen the movie. Go see the movie, because not only are you going to be really, really inspired, You'll get perspective on your life, but it is an incredible launching pad for conversations with your family afterwards about what you're grateful for and what you got out of the film. I mean, even my 9-year-old had a few things to say about it, which I loved. So guys, you can head on over to thedadedge.com/1397. I will have all the information in there for you. John, as much as I wanted to make this show, thedadedge.com/1994, I couldn't do it because I don't have 1994 shows yet, but we're getting there. So for right now, it's /1397. But
I'll come back in 600 shows, man. I look forward. If I live that long, I'll be there for it.
I love it, man. But dude, thank you so much for coming on today. This was absolutely awesome, man.
Thank you, Larry. Well done.
That man.